Speaking of success, we should probably talk about Apple and their WWDC. So, once a year, Apple has a developers conference where they tend to talk about the software of new iPad,
Right.
Mac OS, iPhone stuff. So I'm going to give you a quick summary of WWDC for authors. Most of it doesn't affect you, but there's a few things that you need to know about. One, they're making a change where all of the operating systems are now going to be named after the year instead of having their own separate numbering system.
Thank goodness.
So the automotive companies figured this out about 100 years ago, and for some reason the computer companies are like, no, we're special, our new thing that came out this year is 13. It's like, but it's the fifth. Anyway, so now
Yeah.
it's Mac OS 26, iOS 26, and so it's always going to be the preceding or the next year, just like with cars, right? So if you were to go and buy a brand new Toyota Corolla, they'd be finishing up the 25 Toyota Corolla, and in the fall they'd have the 26 Toyota Corolla. It's going to be the same way with the Mac. I think that's really good. They're launching a whole new interface
Yeah.
for all of their devices, very much like what Microsoft did in the early 2000s, and for the same reason. So, Microsoft was the first to the market with pads or tablets. And their initial tablets were a complete disaster. No one bought them. But they reworked Windows Vista to be tablet friendly. They made this whole operating system interface to be touch friendly, even though at the time no one was using touch devices. Although that may have been little bit later, come to think of it. I may be getting my time. They were early with a tablet that didn't take off. But Apple's taking their least popular product, the AR Vision, the Apple goggles that are $3,500, and they're rolling out a new design philosophy called liquid glass across all of their devices, which is blurry everything, is what the haters call it. It's all about blurs and blurs on top of blurs, and it's going to make the screen harder to read. They'll have some toggles for accessibility, and I imagine most people will toggle those because it is very blurry. That said, it does remind me of that Windows Aero kind of early 2000s look. I was using Linux back then, and I love that kind of shiny candy look. Where it's like, oh, this icon looks delicious. I want to eat it. I want to lick it. So I haven't tried it yet, this new interface. You'll all be getting it if you're using Apple devices on everything in the fall. But I'm cautiously optimistic about this new interface. Now, the big thing that everyone was wondering about with Apple was where they were going to be on AI. So last year at WWDC, they rebranded AI. No, it didn't mean actual Indians. It stood for Apple Intelligence. And they were like, we're going to be the very best AI company. And this was while everyone was really concerned about AI privacy before DeepSeek, when safety was really the concern of AI. And Apple's kind of positioning in the market is you can run the AI on your own computer and not use the cloud. And that promise has persisted. They didn't announce a lot of AI stuff at this WWDC because some of the things they announced at the last WWDC they failed to deliver on. In fact, they're being sued for false advertising because they weren't able to get Siri as smart as they said Siri was going to be. So talking to Siri is still Siri's much stupider than talking to Grok. In fact, on my phone, I've now mapped the action button to go to Grok. So I have a Siri button that I never press to talk to Siri, who doesn't know anything. And then I have a Grok button to talk to Arya, who's very, very smart. And you can interrupt and you can have a very natural feeling conversation. It's actually a little disorienting. And Apple's just not there yet with their Apple Intelligence. But they have rolled out AI writing tools. These already exist on your computer right now. So if you're on a Mac, you can play with these. You can highlight some text and then right click on it and go to writing tools. You'll notice you have a whole section here, and it will proofread it, it will rewrite it, it will summarize it. And I really feel like this is the end of the inquisition against AI writing assistants and AI in writing, because the vast majority of new people to writing are going to be using tools like this because no one ever told them that it was bad. they're like, well, I've got a button for it on my computer. It's right there next to spell check. Why wouldn't I use AI writing tools? Young people are using these tools in school. I don't recommend these because right now it's Apple Intelligence, which is not very good. So, yay, it runs in your machine, but it's not very good yet. So
it's the devil's button, Thomas.
If you're going to use a writing assistant, use a smarter one, which the top ones are OpenAI's GPT is really good. Claude 4.0, Claude Sonnet by Anthropic is probably the best, and then Grok is also good.
Or here's an idea: get good at writing.
Or get better at writing. So I'm not necessarily advocating these tools. There is a fourth feature though that they're rolling out that is very cool, and it's live translation.
That is really neat.
So everybody basically all at the same time is in the process of inventing the Babelfish. So if you're not familiar with the Babelfish, it's from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The hitchhiker goes on this adventure through the galaxy, and there's all these aliens speaking all this alien tongues, and he puts this fish in his ear that like crawls into his brain and allows him to understand all of these different alien languages. So the concept was this Babelfish that basically acted as a universal translator, as they would call it in Star Trek. And we've had versions of this for quite some time. So when I was in Europe 7 years ago, I was able to take my phone and point it at a German menu and see the menu in English on my phone. And that was pretty cool. It allowed me to order, and I could kind of sort of figure out how to do it. They don't have the Oxford comma in Germany, which is actually really important on a menu. So be listing things, and I would expect I'd always get one fewer item on my plate than I was expecting. I was like, these Germans really need to get them an Oxford comma. It really is less ambiguous. But anyway, but now you can get that in real time on a telephone call and in other places. So pretty soon, probably within the next 12 months, there will be some device that you can wear on your ear that will act very much like those little headsets that the UN delegates have, except instead of a human interpreter in a booth translating in real time, it's the machine translating in real time. So this is going to lower barriers between countries and hopefully won't lead to God cursing the computer languages of the internet and sending us all back into the Stone Ages.
So
which is a fun premise for a book, by the way, that God curses the TCP IP protocol with the Babel virus. Yes. And suddenly the internet stops functioning because the core TCP IP protocol doesn't work from like sector to sector or across subnets. There's a lot of fun you could have with this for any of you who wants to write.
That would be amazing.
A science fiction.
So when I was in the Marine Corps, I worked as a linguist. I was a translator when I worked in Intel. And so I'd listen to bad guys and you would translate what they said, but you had to do it in such a way that your American analyst could understand what it was that this person was saying. So sometimes you had to change it. And the problem is that AI is a very literal translator. So when they translate,
like the King James version, not like the NIV.
No, not like that. It's like where your 3-year-old is so literal and can't understand nuance, or I'm saying something else, but I'm saying this kind of thing. AI is not going to be able to do that yet until it has enough
with the large language
awareness.
models. It's getting, because that's how the AI translation used to be. It used to be formal equivalency, where it basically would look up a dictionary and just swap out the words. But now it's able to use an LLM to smooth out the translation and actually have more of an NIV, NLT style translation and less of a NASB word for word.
I don't know, man.
It's not there yet, right? Human translators are still going to have work because there's always going to be nuance, but the machine is getting better at the nuance.
Well, I mean, I worked Arabic, okay, which is such a metaphorical language. It's not as scientific as English is. It comes from all the Flemish languages, they're very different in the way they approach the expression of ideas. Well, Arabic is so metaphorical and almost pictorial in the way that it expresses things. So there's 19 different ways to say die, like dead. And we would say, we would consider to be like, oh, he kicked the bucket. And Arabs are like, what? What does kick the bucket mean? Like, we used to hang people and you would just kick the bucket.
Do you know that in English we have something like 40 words for the word to steal? I've been collecting a collection of these words myself because it is shocking how many we have. The difference between piracy and ravaging and raiding and burglary and theft and
They're
larceny. It's like all of these things have nuance, right? Like whether you're using force, are you lying? Are you lying to somebody that you're friends with, right? We have a totally different word for that. It's
Marines use resource reallocation.
and so it's like, what were our ancestors up to that we needed 40 different words for stealing stuff?
Have you seen the British Museum? Okay.
All right, moving on.